That's right! Welcome to Rage Quit Wire. We got Pete here with my buddy Chris.
Yep.
So, we're doing something kind of different today, something that is unpopular in the American meta. We're talking about hunters.
That's true. And, we like being unpopular.
That's true. We really don't mind.
Yeah, I could give 0 fucks.
But we want people to watch the show.
Whatever.
Listen to the show. Yeah.
We do this because it's fun.
That's true.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we want to, have those moths come to our flame that like to hear the rage quitting. So we're going to talk about a few things today. We got some big news that dropped for you people that like the tournament scene. We also had a survey that got released by Steamforged. We're going to talk a lot about hunters, including some information that we got from a world-renowned player, a hunter player. And then we're going to get questions from Twitter and get questions from Facebook. And then we're going to end up with some news. And those of you that haven't looked us up yet, we have a Twitter feed, Tweedledum. We got Rage Quit Wire, and that's on the Twitter machine. We also got Rage Quit Choir. Man, I can't talk right now. I think my sugar rush is going down.
Words.
So we had like a work party today for Christmas, and I had so much sugar that I was like on this sugar rush, and I think it's finally coming down.
This dumbass has been singing the entire evening.
Yeah, buddy. I get knocked down. Anyways, so
the neighbors were watching you.
They were. It was embarrassing. At least I had clothes on. So
this time,
yeah. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting podcast. I can already tell. But if you want to, we got the Facebook page too, so make sure that you check that out. We post a lot in the Guild Ball support group. And
hit us with some likes, some subscribe, and that sort of thing.
Also, get on our podcast. We're on iTunes. Leave some comments too, because we like getting feedback from y'all, even if it's like, man, you guys are dumb.
Even though it's usually like some hate toward me, specifically toward me.
Well, you're very bombastic.
Well, I feel like you fuel the hate toward me.
Yeah. I'm also, I'm the yin to your yang. I'm the calm.
Why does it got to be a yin yang thing? Is that because I'm Asian?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Well,
I'm not hiding it.
Why does it always got to be about race with you white people?
What do you mean, you white people? So we'll go ahead and we'll just start with some news. So the big thing that dropped today, that it had social media kind of going, was that OPD
a buzz. Social media was a buzz.
Like there was some serious conversations going on with that. So those of you that didn't check it out or just kind of you're not up on the news and stuff, what they did is Steamforged updated the OPD packet, and the big thing that they changed were two things.
Paint jobs.
Yeah. So one, they're like, painting. It's okay. We want you to play games. So what do you think about the whole not having to paint your stuff, Chris?
I'm okay with it this is how they made it, with the plastic boxes. Because the plastic boxes do have like a team color, so you still kind of look like you're playing that team. I don't like when people aren't willing to paint their metal models. I understand both sides of it. I understand that you want painted models from the perspective of it adding to the experience for the players, of it attracting new players. I can guarantee you it doesn't matter what level of player you are, if somebody new comes into the shop and they're watching 2 games and one game has completely unpainted models and the other one has painted models, it doesn't matter if the more skilled players are on the table with the unpainted models, they're going to want to watch the game with the painted models.
Yeah, and I think we both agree to the fact that we want our stuff to be painted because it really attracts people to the game. They're like, man, I think both of us have had our models on the table, and I mean, we're not even top painting quality guys, but when people see them on the table, they're like, man, that looks really cool. Did you paint those? And then you get a source of pride with it too,
Yeah. Well, and more importantly, I think it gets kind of the creative juices flowing for people where they're like, wait, do they come like that? Do I get to do it? Do I get to pick out the colors? All of those questions come.
And I think the perfect thing, as I'm staring at my hunters models over here, was when I painted your hunters up for you, you wanted them almost like this wildling, kind of like snow-themed kind of hunters.
Yeah, and you kept wanting to battle against that.
I did. I was like, man, let's get a little more color.
You know what?
In
So
there.
get your own fucking hunters, which
and
you
I
did.
And so my hunters are more like autumn-themed. There's a lot of, browns and oranges and yellows in there. They pop on the table. I like them a lot.
Yeah, they look great, just not as good as mine.
Yeah, well, I did paint those, so I'm not going to argue with you too much. You are good at basing, though. I am going to give you that. I love your cork basing you do.
Yeah, I like those rocks.
Yeah. So, and I've posted pictures of some of the models Chris and I do. And if you see the cork bases, usually that's Chris, and then I do a lot of the painting. Chris usually paints his awesome unique models that he gets.
I don't really like the basing parts of painting, but I really like doing like the detail work. Like I like adding like the blood effects and the snow and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but the cool thing is though, we are hobbyists that we like playing this game. But I do like this. I mean, me as a painter, I don't like it, but me as a player, I like it because I think it's going to attract more people to the game. Kind of like those X-Wing players that don't want to paint their stuff. I think you're going to get more of those into the game because they're like, oh, look, this model looks cool as is. Don't have to assemble it right out of the box.
Yeah, and the other part that I think is going to be fantastic is it's sticking with Steamforge's goal of being as open access as possible, low barrier to entry. And for those that really hate it, what they need to understand is that Steamforge is a small company. They can't rest on their laurels or stand on their high ground and look down on others from their ivory tower that, well, how dare you not paint your models? Yeah. They need to be as inviting as possible to as many gamers as possible.
And honestly, I don't think even with that added in there, I don't think you're going to see that many unpainted models because it's like, dude, it's 6 models.
But for real, if I know somebody that they have been playing like for a while and they don't paint their models, I'm still going to make fun of them.
Well, I think the hazing's there. Rick from Don't Touch the Beard, he's an English guy that does podcasts, and he's a pretty funny guy. He's the one that posted that YouTube video of how do you beat farmers? How do you beat Thresher farmers? And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. He's like, So he's a funny guy, and he actually caught some shit today on the support group because he posted the Simpsons meme that basically was like,
it's the Guild Ball supporters group. You say support group like we're in like AA or something.
It is a support group, man. I'm addicted to this.
You're
stuff,
addicted
man.
to it? You need that
game.
dopamine hit from your paint jobs? Okay.
I do, man. Yeah, he got some crap because, he was putting some memes out there that were like, don't be a dirtbag, paint your stuff, things like that. They were pretty good.
I've noticed that it seems like the UK has more hobbyists that are committed to make sure it's painted. Those are the only people that I've seen today, and I'm sure there are ones from the US, but the only ones that I've noticed have been from the UK that have been on this, why would they do that? Well, like it's going to make things worse.
Americans traditionally in every war game I have ever played have been, yes, you have people that paint and the stuff looks amazing, but you also have a lot of players where it's just like, I'm just going to assemble it, get it on the table, crush your face, and then when it's not good anymore, I'm going to get the new thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, I think, in the United States, whereas around, like, especially like we were saying, UK and other parts of Europe and the world, they're more like, hobbyists.
Well, and I think that it kind of speaks to those cultures too, right? I feel like that European side of things is a little bit more refined, if you will.
Well, that's how we end up with that Cena.
Yeah.
So, it was cool though. The other change in the OPD packet that they had, which is the big thing for you that are competitive, is that now when you set up your game with your opponent, what you do is you basically decide who's going to go first, who's going to kick and receive, and then you do your captain and mascot.
Yeah. This is a change that, as far as a rule change for the game, I think it is a great change. It means that people are going to be more willing to take both captains and apply both captains depending on what the circumstance is. There are definitely examples out there of Shark and Corsair where one has a greater advantage if they're kicking or versus.
Well, I think
receiving.
even like Rage and Pinvice.
Yeah, there are tons.
Yeah.
You mean Ballista and Pinvice?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was actually thinking of.
I don't know what guild you're playing.
Well, no. So I was thinking of Rage and Trisket, and then Pinvice and Ballista. I think those are two good examples of, and I kind of mixed them both, but I think those are two good examples of captains that want to either kick or receive, and you wouldn't maybe pick Trisket before because if you're not receiving, it might be a tough game for you if they're good at killing the ball.
Yeah, so like if they're the farmers.
Yeah.
Which actually brings up the more important point. Of course, this change helps the farmers the most because now you're going to have farmers players that are overwhelming because if they receive the ball, they know they drop Grange into that. And if they are if they're kicking it, and they know they're going to have to chase some scoring team down, they're going to drop Thresher into that. So, of course, this rule, which I have no problem with the rule in general, I just have a problem with the way that it gives a buff to a team that's already super strong.
Yeah.
I want somebody that's a great player, like Alex Botts when he won Worlds. He dropped Thresher almost every time because for him, he's like, well, I don't know if I'm kicking or receiving. I better drop Thresher.
Yeah.
Man, how much easier are those wins going to be for him if he knows he's receiving first and can just kill the ball with Grange?
Yeah, he's working on Blacksmiths right now, and I don't think he's played Grange a ton. So I think he's actually going to just do Blacksmiths, and even if he goes back to Farmers, I think he's still going to just do Thresher because, I don't think he's a huge Grange fan personally. There's a couple other small changes in there. You can check them out. Feel free to. It's on the Steamforge site. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about that one?
No, I think that
those are two main things.
Yeah.
So looking at the survey that they also released, because this week they also dropped a survey, and that was about the 12-man team PVC
models. Yeah.
So you want to kind of share what they did with that?
So what they did was they basically created a survey that's a one-question type of a survey where you fill it out if you're interested in getting a PVC box of the Fisherman. If they get enough responses, what they're going to do is they're probably going to make that Fisherman's box and then send people emails telling them, hey, these are going to be available, pre-order at your local shop or whatever. So it's kind of it's not a survey in the sense of like, mark yes or no. It's just fill out the survey if you're interested.
Yeah, there was a thing on there that was like, do you own Fisherman and would you buy the 12-man Fisherman box?
Yeah, but it's only one direction. It's not like a choose yes or choose no type of thing.
So with me personally, I was just kind of like, no, I don't own the Fisherman, and I probably wouldn't pick up that 12-man box.
Yeah, I like the PVC models. I think that definitely the resculpts are going to fix some issues with some of the metal models. Like, I know a lot of people have Krakens. I have a Kraken that the spear tip broke off.
Yeah.
Things like that. And so the PVC models are a good idea. They're obviously a lot cheaper to get people into the game. But for me personally, I would much rather see them get all these minor guilds out. Because I think if you told anybody... I was talking to Jeremy about this yesterday. He's a Morticians player in the area. And he wants the PVC models. And I said, well, Jeremy, let me ask you this. If you had your choice between buying PVC versions of those Morticians or buying the minor guild rat catchers, which one are you going to pick? And he's like, the minor guild rat catchers. And I imagine that's what most people would say. The calculation that I think Steamforge should make, and if there's anybody that has a hookup to Steamforge that's listening to this, it might be a good suggestion for them, is calculate how many... They probably have some measures as far as estimates of what their sales are going to be of the existing metal guilds over the next 3 years, which I imagine is how long it's going to take to get all those minor guilds out. And so over those next 3 years, is it cost effective to take on the larger cost of getting PVC production going at the beginning because you anticipate that the curve of your sales is going to be enough to offset that?
Yeah, I would definitely I would do the minor guilds, get those cranked out. And to me, this is something you can improve as you're kind of done making new guilds. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of times with like 40K, they don't do a ton of new factions, but what they'll do is they'll do either new updated models or they'll do new units or new little changes like that. And that's kind of where I would like to see the new team guilds come out, is like, hey, we got all the minor guilds out of the way. Now, if you're interested, here's these new team boxes we're going to start releasing. I think trying to do that on top of all these minor guilds is just, it's too much. And I think for small stores like we have, like the Final Round, I think, which is our game shop locally here in Charleston, I think it's just, they're not going to be able to carry all that product. A lot of places don't have enough players to buy all that stuff.
So, and this is the other thing that I was thinking about, is they probably should break up those PVC resculpts and just do, because it wouldn't crush them to release a box that was Fisherman but in a 6-man box, to see how it goes. And that would be a lot better from the standpoint of buy-in point for new players. Most people that are starting, they want a 6-man starter. They don't want to buy the entire guild. And just do it like you've been doing it, right? Make it $50 instead of $100, and there you go.
Well, see, and even some of the new resculpts, and we already talked about a few of them, I'm not even that impressed with. Like, I look at it and I'm like, okay, that's not that great. It's one of two things. Either I like the way they did it. Three things. I either like the way they did it.
I'm only going to give you two things.
Like, I think that new shark.
Pick carefully.
So I think that new shark kind of looks like really cool. I think either the model looks terrible. So like that fat salt model, like he's a big beer bellied now salt.
Okay.
And then like just it's like it's kind of the same model. So those are kind of the three things when I look at it. I'm just like,
if they're going to resculpt them, they should just resculpt them all.
Yeah.
Like, make them completely different. And
like we said, those hunters, it looks like they're just standing up. Like, literally the same model, just, hey, I'm up right now.
Yeah, but if you're going to do PVC versions, just resculpt the whole thing so that there's not a situation like Angel where she looks the same in the metal and in the PVC.
Yeah.
Make it to where you have distinctive Season 1, 2, and 3 models versus Season 4 models. I think that would be more cool for everyone. I'll tell you what, though, they do need to fix the size and the scale of the Masons for sure.
Masons, I think Union have that same problem.
Even the female characters look like giants compared to those Mason males.
Oh, yeah, like Tower.
Yeah, Tower looks like a little guy.
You'd be like, it's like an ironic name. Like, look at Tower. Oh, man, this guy's really tiny.
I'd rather have Tower. Yeah, Tower should be the size of like Harry the Hat.
Yeah, probably.
So
at least anyways. It's just one of those things where I know people are excited because they're new and shiny. It's like, oh my god, look at these resculpts. I think everybody needs to calm the fuck down, though, and think about the consequences of releasing these 12-man boxes.
Yeah, it'll slow down all the minor guild release and all of that. The other thing that I would be careful with is, for a lot of the people listening, they're hardcore fans of the game and hardcore gamers. Steamforge is a smaller company. If you're not going to buy those PVC models, don't just fill out that survey for the sake of filling it out, or you think it could be cool so you want to see what it would be like if it gets made. Like, really consider giving them good feedback by only filling that out if you know you're going to buy them.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things like we talked about last week where if it's a guild like the Brewers, I wouldn't buy that resculpt box just because I actually like the models, the metal ones I have, whereas the Masons I have are like tiny, so I probably would rebuy those.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Fisherman, actually. If it came out in PVC, I probably would buy that just because of like the issues we've had with Kraken Spear. What else?
I wouldn't mind if they did something with... the one thing I don't like about the Brewers that I would hope they would fix if they did PVC sculpts of them is making Tapper and Hooper have different poses. They look too similar.
Yeah, I mean...
especially for new players.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I actually kind of like that because sometimes it'll throw people off in like a tournament.
Oh, so...
They'll be like, oh, I'm going to go after that
so you
guy.
just want to trick people.
No, not tricking. It's just like, oh, you decided to go after Hooper instead of my captain. That's cool.
Yeah, user error instead of... No, that's not a good reason. They should change that.
I mean, it's not a reason. I'm just saying that I don't mind that people get those two confused.
I can only say so much because I like using limited edition models in tournament. And so those are obviously look different too.
Yeah, and so looking at kind of moving forward, because we're going to talk about the other news when we get to the end of the podcast, is we're talking about hunters looking into our guilds that we're doing. I think generally as a podcast, we're doing a pretty good job of going through the guilds. We're kind of just setting this up as we go through and, picking guilds that either we're comfortable with or getting some people to interview, and then we're using that to kind of share the information about the guild.
Or ones that we're trying to get more into.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm literally getting into hunters because I actually told Peter Williamson this, which is the guy that we interviewed, and he was at the finals during the World Tournament, is that I think United States, I think we need to have a little more respect for hunters because I think the more I play them, the more cool things I'm seeing they can do, and I'm kind of really excited to get into them because I think they can be a really, really cool guild that can be very, very competitive. I just think a lot of American players don't recognize that a lot.
Yeah, they definitely have some unique traits that other guilds don't mimic and don't mirror.
Yeah. So I think that kind of brings us to, I mean, they're a challenging guild, wouldn't you say, Chris?
Yeah, they definitely... I feel like to master them, it would be a challenge. I also feel like to play against them, against a high-quality player, is going to be challenging. Definitely prone to some frustrating moments. They're a control team, so having them be able to do all sorts of character plays to your models is something that could be very frustrating.
Yeah, and Peter Williamson said basically, because we asked him, do you need to be a skilled player to like be successful with hunters? And he said by all means he wouldn't recommend them to a new player, just because he said that the activation, that order that you want to do with the guild can be very tricky. He said that it's not easy like some other guilds where it's like, oh, you want to activate Tapper first, or hey, you want to activate this model early. It's really not like that with the hunters. Sometimes Theron, you might not have him go till, the end of your turn for whatever reason. Or maybe, you have him go second, and then, hey, maybe you want the bear to go next. Maybe you want to do the linked with Zarola and Fahad.
So this actually leads into something that's not hunter specific, but we'll get back to the hunters, is I think that this is something that more people need to consider when making recommendations to new players. There are definitely certain guilds that are more user-friendly to newer players. Mm-hmm. And we've been talking about this lately. I really think that there are really two ways that people kind of pick guilds. One is based on aesthetics.
That's the way I usually do it.
Yeah, and that's fine. But the other is based on play style and playability. Mm. And that's something that I'm going to focus a lot more on. Instead of just telling people, hey, look at these guilds or read some fluff, I'm going to ask them, do you like to give them some demo games maybe, and then say, do you like to get into melee, or do you like the scoring aspect? What's more entertaining to you? And I'm really going to steer people a lot toward fishermen and butchers. Those ones have the most straightforward play styles. I think once you start getting into some of the control guilds like morticians and hunters, that becomes a little bit more challenging. And definitely when you're looking at ones like the farmers and the blacksmiths, where they have really unique rules, and there's going to be a big separation between the top players in the world versus an average new player, I'm going to try and steer people away from that as far as my recommendations go. But I don't think that all guilds are just created equal in the sense of learning to play the game.
Well, and I think it's interesting because you can ask players to get a better idea of like what they want to play, and you can do that by like, hey, what other games did you play? Because I remember when you demoed the game for me, you were like, hey, you played Circle of Orboros and War Machine. You're like, you would probably be really good at hunters or morticians, like when you first told me to get in the game. But I went Brewers because I'm like, hey, these guys are drunk. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting into it. I'm like, yeah, Chris was kind of right. These hunters have a lot of cool little jank that they can do.
Yeah, they're definitely like your Circle Army. The other aspect is I think about someone like one of the other guys in our meta that came from War Machine. His name's Chris Leopard. He is a great tabletop player. And in many ways, we haven't been able to get him hooked on Guild Ball because he started with the Masons, which is kind of difficult to work that balance of that Jack of all trades guild. And then when we were getting some of the new boxes, he got some of the farmers box, and he just couldn't, activate them properly, the way that they should be. And so he's had some frustrating experiences early on, and we kind of lost a player that I would love to have in the meta that would really help make our meta better. And it's
important.
Too bad.
It's important to get the right fit when you get a new player, because like a weakness of the Hunters Guild, and once again this has come from Peter, he said that basically, one, the guild lacks in 2-inch reach. There's really not a ton of it. So those unpredictable models can be tough to deal with. He said, so he actually said that engineers players should think about playing Vet Velocity into Hunters because of that unpredictable movement. So that's kind of an interesting thing that I think he added. And then he said their lack of explosive damage, they really can't one-round you. It's this kind of like slow bleed. And I think you saw that in the game you and I did, Chris, against your Butchers versus my Hunters. And people are going to see that. We already posted it, so if you haven't checked it out already, go on our YouTube page. But I think people will see that there was this slow bleed, and then all of a sudden it was like turn 4 or 5. I think it was turn 4. Yeah,
what happened was you put on conditions like poison and things like that, and then eventually the damage just accumulated, and then you were able to finally get it. But obviously there are a lot of games that are over by turn 4, so if you're not a skilled enough player to stretch it out that long, that's a problem.
Exactly. And then he said the last thing was lack of ball control. It can be relatively easy to get the ball off of Hunters, and I noticed that in our game where there was a couple times I had the ball, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take it and kick it out. I was like, God, man.
Yeah.
These...
Well, and the thing that I've noticed, too, is when I play your hunters, especially if I know someone is leaning toward Theron, I'm going to try to take the models and the captain that have higher defense. So I do agree with the pin vice recommendation against them, not just for like something like unpredictable movement, but for something like the 5 defense.
Vet velocity is, I think she's a 4-1 actually, or 4-0. The vet version goes down in defense, but yeah, still pretty decent.
But my point is, you want to take the higher defense models just so they can't do all of that annoying stuff.
Even if it's a 4, that still is more of a chance of missing, and that happened in our game. I missed a ton of character plays.
Yeah, I mean, well, and the swing of taking somebody like Filet, who's a 5 defense, versus Ox, who's a 3, that's a big difference, and it definitely messes up the averages of the defense of the models that you're trying to hit. So I would definitely recommend that.
It must have killed you to bring Filet, Chris. I know it killed you to bring her.
Well, that's something that we got into in the other battle report, but that the Filet matchup was good as far as not getting a whole bunch of ridiculous character plays put on.
Yeah, and the things, so what, because we always talk about what gets us into a guild. So the things I like about the hunters is, one, the aesthetics. I like the hunting models. I love I think even though they're season 2, the sculpts are pretty good. I like the trap mechanics. I think putting down traps and getting snares out and then bringing models that benefit from the snares. I like that of the gameplay. They also, with the new Captain Scatha in that box that came out, it makes them way more diverse. So now you actually have a scoring option if you want to go like straight up scoring. And the thing that, and this is what Peter Williamson brought up, that is awesome about the hunters is you can bring a ton of Furious Charge and you can bring a ton of Back to the Shadows. So you have a very mobile force that is very efficient using basically your influence. Basically, you can get free charges, you can reposition for free, and it's just a really nifty team that you can put together with these guys.
Yeah, I think that the nice thing is you kind of get all 3 playstyles with them. Theron is obviously a control piece.
Yep.
And then with Scatha is obviously a scoring piece. And then you can create certain matchups by triggering the right snares at the right moments. You can get a pretty decent damage melee team as well. But for those players that are looking to play hunters, I would say they probably need the experience and ability to play a good control game in order to get the most out of them.
So this is kind of where I'm going to do a quick shout out for the Midwest guys, Midwest Wargaming, because they actually just released an article geared towards like new players and figuring out how to activate and like what the important things are. And one of the things they said in that article that was, I think, really key is they talked about basically you have to know what your opponent's stuff does.
For sure.
Especially with a team like Hunters, because, yeah, Theron has this great pinned ability, but if you don't know which model to pin or which model to slow down or which model to dick with, you're going to get stomped. Mm-hmm. So it is very, very important when you are playing Hunters, not just being a new player, but if you play a control team, you need to know which model you need to control the most.
And that's why it takes a more experienced player. I don't encourage people to play a control game early. It's because they don't know the other models well enough to control them.
Yeah.
And so, but who wrote that article? Was it JD?
Yeah, it was JD.
Well, what the fuck does that guy know? No, I love JD. We've become buddies on Facebook.
You guys are like BFFs now.
Yeah, we've become friends. Although he likes Thresher too much. It's just
a little too much for your taste.
I know. Fuck that.
So I think what we'll do, Chris, why don't we go to the Q&A if you want to pull up those questions.
Yeah. So some quick questions.
So I'll just say the way we're going to run this is I'm going to use, because I did an interview and I'm going to post this in the comments section.
Usually what we do is we do a Skype interview with a player that has an expertise. But Peter Williamson lives in Australia.
No, New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Even more off.
Okay. So either way, he lives far away.
Yeah, he's like, the time zone's way off.
Yeah.
So I just emailed him and he wrote some great responses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that in the comments section of the YouTube video. So those of you that want to check it out, go ahead and check it out on there. And then I'm going to use those answers from this point forward to go ahead and answer the Q&A questions. So these are going to be his ideas about the hunters.
We're going to try and fill in the blanks, almost like one of those like auto-populate book things.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so but we'll post the text of the interview that we did with him on the YouTube page, etc. So, first rule definition: can Snow use the ooh ball trait on the kickoff if it's within 6 inches?
So we didn't ask that question,
but we do have an
to
answer.
Peter. Okay.
So the answer to that is no. They have ruled on that. Steamforge has, and you can't use that trait during that kickoff phase.
Yeah, I think really the only character play or character trait that they've ruled that that happens on the kickoff is Granite, because it says, hey, after the kick, go ahead and move.
Yeah. Yep. The next one is Hearn versus Vet Hearn. When and why. Which ones do you prefer?
Okay, this one was actually pretty interesting because Peter basically said that he's a big fan of Vet Hearn, which kind of blew my mind because I'm just getting into these, and he's like, oh yeah, I really he's dropped O'Hearn out of his list.
Okay.
Like, he actually doesn't bring him anymore. And he said the reason why was because O'Hearn for him traditionally plays a little more forward, and he feels like he dies more than he kind of gets. Okay. So he said that's kind of like the main reason why he hasn't brought O'Hearn in a while. But he actually has Vet Hearn in his scoring lineup. So he likes basically playing that scoring game with Vet Hearn in that Scatha lineup. And I started looking at the traits and stuff, and Vet Hearn actually has some pretty sick threat range, because if you can snare a model before him, you can get him the ball. If you're already within 6, you can do a character play basically skewered, but if you damage a snared model, you can then teleport within an inch of it. So that gets you at least 6, 7, 8, 9 inches on the other side of the model. You can buy an attack, either push him away, knock him down, move your 6, so that's like another 15, and then a 6-inch kick, so it's like a 20, 21-inch threat just off that model.
So this actually brings up something that I think a lot of players need to know is if you've been playing Brewers, you know how important it is that you don't leave your models knocked down.
Yeah.
It's the same with the Hunters. It is important to get the snares off of those Hunters. They have too many models that are going to follow up and take advantage of snared models if you allow that to stay on.
Yeah.
And so make sure to take those off.
And I know, and knockdown makes more sense because you're like, yeah, I can't be on the ground. Snared, a lot of times people will just leave it there because they're like, oh, I'm just slowed down and my defense is lower. But the Hunters have so many benefits for it that if you leave it on there too long, they're going to take advantage of it.
Well, and the other thing that is important is if you take that snared off and get that defense back, because the Hunters don't have a lot of 2-inch reach, you're able to counterattack in ways that you might not be able to against the Brewers, who have lots of 2-inch reach. And so people understand with the Brewers why you want to stand up those knockdown models. I'm just trying to emphasize that it is equally important to do that when you're talking about the Hunters models.
Yeah, and something else Hearn has that makes him even faster is that he only is he's a 2-3 influence, so he brings 2 influence as opposed to O'Hearn's 1.
Okay.
So that makes him, pretty good right there. He has a knockdown early, his knockdown on 2.
And it's momentous.
It is. That's a big deal. You don't get singled out, so that's kind of a ding on him a little bit there. But then he also gets +2 movement if he goes through rough ground.
Okay.
So he's quicker than the other Hearn.
Kind of, because he still has to take the deduction for the rough ground.
No, he is light-footed.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Hearn
so
has
he's actually fast. So he uses rough ground like...
Fast ground.
Fast ground. Okay.
Yeah. So he's pretty... I'm going to try him out a couple of games, probably tomorrow when we have this big shindig.
Cool. Do that against somebody else.
Yeah. Because Peter gave me a good idea with that, so I'm gonna check that out.
I'm sure Rick will love the experience.
Yeah. So Peter did recognize that O'Hearn, he has some playabilities, and O'Hearn is, he's good, but like he said, a lot of times he ends up getting killed, and that happened in our game that we did in the battle report, that I got him forward and Filet shanked him.
This same person that asked these first 2 questions also asked about recommendations for a newer player, if someone was brand new to Guild Ball and wanted to play the Hunters, what sort of recommendations would you give them on how to play the guild? By the way, the guy who asked these questions, his name is Matt Randall. I call him Chief.
Yeah.
He's from Salt Lake City, Utah. I know him pretty well. And he's actually one of the people that got me into Guild Ball a few years ago. And so, shout out to Chief. If he tells you that his name is Matt, don't allow him to do that. His name is Chief. So,
yeah.
He knows the rules about that nickname, and he always tries to circumvent them. But he wanted to know about new players and what recommendations you would give. I think that we've kind of covered that. I wouldn't recommend the new players play the Hunters.
So if you are a new player and you absolutely love the Hunters, by all means go ahead and get into them and just start getting just know you're probably going to, like, if you take, like, I don't know, what do you say it takes the average new player to get decent at the game?
I don't know. It depends on their gaming experience, but I would say, like, they would have to play each captain at least like 10 times.
Okay. So, I mean, that can be like a month or two to get decent, right?
Yeah.
So, Hunters, I think, would take longer, like add maybe 5 more games.
I don't think it would take that much longer with Scatha, but it would definitely take longer with Theron. So, I guess the recommendation that I would give is encourage them to start with Scatha. They can learn a scoring game, and that'll probably be a little bit easier for them.
Scatha's just fun, man. Like, you've seen me play her before. Mm-hmm. She's fun. You're kicking snowballs around. You're snaring people. Her legendary's fun. I mean, she's just a fun model.
Well, and I like the models that you kind of take with her. I like how her box works with her.
Yeah.
I also like that you're able to take, some of those. She's one where you're able to do a good job of taking even some of the melee models like Cena and. Those they still play well with her.
And I actually think that right now, out of all the old guilds, the Hunters are probably the easiest guild to get everything right now, just because the packaging hasn't changed as much. So I feel like it's easier to get them. Plus, I feel like a lot of people have them and want to get rid of them, like especially since a lot of people got them in the mystery box. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's a lot of Hunters out there, so you could probably get them for cheap, like I did.
Yeah, go to Guild Ball Sales and Trades on Facebook, and you'll find all sorts of cool stuff.
All right, what we got next?
So this is from Adam Bustaker.
You're looking at it, not me.
Well, how do you pronounce that? Bustaker?
Sure.
Okay. So he says that he wants to know a little bit about our thoughts on 6-man comps and why he's having some trouble with 2-inch melee specifically.
All right. So there's a couple options that you have here. And so one thing that I thought it was interesting is I'm going to give Peter's. He had 2 pretty cool teams that he shared with us. But one thing he said is that literally he feels like he can drop either captain into any matchup and be pretty successful with it. The things he gave us with was like basically he's like, this is my preferred drop, but I could also go with the other captain. So what he said, so some traditional who would you say is a 2-inch reach like powerhouse in the game?
The farmers.
Well, I'm sorry.
Fuck those farmers,
so
by the way.
So this is word for word what Peter said. So He said, farmers, what do you drop? He's like, farmers, fucked if I know, still bitter and twisted. See my last 3 game scores versus farmers. In theory, there is merit to both captains.
Man, he should be on Rage Quit Wire.
I feel like he had a Rage Quit moment just with, he's like...
Yeah, that's what I regret. We weren't able to ask him for a Rage Quit story.
Yeah. And I thought about it, but I thought it'd be more funny to share in person. So if we have him on sometime, we'll get him. But who's another 2-inch reach that you say there's a lot of it in that guild?
Brewers.
Okay, so Brewers, he said that he prefers dropping Scatha into that. And the reason why he said that is because if the Brewer player drops Esters, then they can remove conditions way too easy. So he's like, go with the scoring team, get in and out, try to, basically try to get your quick goals, pick off the weak players. So if you see Spigot, which you're going to see in a Brewer team, kill Spigot. That is like number one out of your playbook. Always kill Spigot when he's available. He's the easiest to kill, the least amount of boxes, no tough hide, low defense.
Well, I feel like Scatha's a great drop into the Brewers for 2 reasons. First, if they drop Tapper, you're not beating that in melee. Period. You have to. You
might as well outscore him.
Yeah, and then the Esther's drop is too good of an answer for the condition. So you take away the advantage of that drop. Yeah, so
and
I just feel like no matter what somebody's going to play, you drop.
So Peter's a really great hunter player, and he said that you got to be careful though, because even him sometimes he'll get halfway through the game and he's like, why am I fighting in the middle of the board with these dudes? Just like Clay, just why I didn't want to brawl with them, and now I'm in the middle of the board with them.
But Clay's going to get baited in that because that's just personality.
I know, right? So who's another 2-inch? There's a couple other ones I'm thinking of.
I don't know. Where do you want to go with this?
I'd say the
Fisherman, obviously.
I was going to say the last one that I wanted to talk about was Fisherman. So Fisherman, he actually goes with Theron, and I think that's actually a pretty good idea to go with Theron into that. Do you have any thoughts why, just off the top of your head?
Yeah, because you can slow them down with the snares. You can try to control them so they can't make scoring runs. They have to run right toward him. Mm-hmm. And there are multiple reasons. And Theron's going to be better into melee.
And if you go into a Corsair team, a nimbled Fahad is a good roadblock to that drag. So that's always good.
Yeah.
Egret's also good, getting some poison out there. Peter also said that you're forcing the Fisherman player to spend their additional resources they want to use on, like, I don't know, scoring goals, on getting rid of conditions. He said you're probably going to struggle keeping hold of the ball, so just try to put it in a spot where you can kill it and just, try to get those takeouts and maybe...
I really strongly believe that with the Fisherman, you need to push that ball. Like, if you're playing
get it as far up the pitch.
You need to push that ball onto their side of the field. So they have to come back to you to get it, and then have to turn around to try and score. That's the best way to control the ball with a Fisherman player.
So the 6-man teams, and I thought this, and a couple of things surprised me with these, especially like Vet Hearn, but I'll share the 2 teams. So the Scatha team that Peter brings is Scatha, Fahad, Ulfer, Vet Hearn, Zarola, and Jakar. So this is a straight up pretty scoring game, but you can also get your 2 takeouts with...
Jakar?
Yeah, Jakar. Jakar's a beast.
Yeah, he's good.
Like, I don't like to a lot of times say, like, hey, this is an auto-include, but Jakar's a...
I don't think he's an auto-include.
I think he is, dude. That guy's good.
Well, he's good, I agree.
He's fast, he kills, he puts down traps, he snares, bleeds.
I guess he can play with Theron and Scatha, so yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, and then, so...
But I'm not surprised by the Ulfer thing at all. Like, Ulfer is vastly underrated.
So the problem with Ulfer, though, is that he wants to do damage... but you have to wrap to get the tackle and the damage, and that can be tough sometimes. So
who cares about doing the damage then? He's such a good scoring model.
Well, no. So if you do damage, I think it's called Blood Scent, and basically he gets an extra 1-2 to his kick. So he becomes
okay.
I think he becomes a 3 or a 4-8, something like that.
Okay. So either way, I think that he's good, especially because they give him advantages if he's like off on his own.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about, especially in a scoring list where you want to be spread out, the fact that he's like the only model in the game that it's to his advantage in melee to be by himself is a really good thing.
The other team that he loves is Theron, Fahad, Minx, Cena, and Egret, and Jakar. So Peter likes running the bear with Theron. And the way he said that he uses him is he kind of uses him the same way you use Boar, whereas he'll keep him back, and as the team kind of gets up in their snared condition and a little weakened by all the poison and stuff, then he brings the bear in, does a bear hug, gets 3 points, and there you are.
I really think that bear is like an advanced player only model.
Yeah,
because when you have that bear out there, that bear is so easy to farm. It's so easy to mismanage your influence because he takes none.
Easy to score off of.
He's easy to score off of. He's easy to there's so many. He's easy to negate the free charge. There's so many problems with that bear if you don't know what you're doing.
It's kind of like playing Vet Catalyst a little bit, where you got to be smart with it, because if you just throw him up there, he's just not doing anything.
Very much. And the other issue with playing that bear is new players are really going to want to play that bear because it's cool.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be like, oh, look at this big bear. Like, of course I want to take that. By the way, just to let any of you know, bears can run downhill.
Oh, my God. So, this is a funny story. Chris just got done cork basing his bear, and the bear's running downhill, and he's all excited about it. It's like, yeah, look at that. It's so badass. And then we have our teenager in the group, Logan, who comes up, and he's like, you know that bears can't run downhill, right? And Chris is like, what? And he's like, yeah, if they run downhill, they'll like tumble and they'll fall and
because
break
like
their neck and stuff.
their front legs are longer than their back legs.
So we had to Google it.
I Googled this immediately because here's the thing. I can't have a mistake like that on the building of my model.
Have to redo it.
I would have to rip him off that base and turn him around so that he was running uphill. But we Googled it, and bears can run downhill without falling, and they will outrun human beings running up or downhill.
Yes.
So just to let you know that, you may base him as you please.
That's right. So what's our next question there, Chris? Let's try to get at least a couple more.
Yeah, okay. So this one is from James and Allison Croach.
Okay.
I'm guessing that this must be from Allison because, I mean, of course, there's a female Guild Ball player out there someplace. Sure.
No, there are. I've actually seen it. There's one that posted today, but go ahead.
Okay, so do you see any lineups or matchups which would get good use out of Egret? She always seems to underperform for me as a striker or trying to damage with character play. So I've never had this issue. And so what are your thoughts on this? Because it seems like he's having a problem with this model, but it's nothing that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I like Egret a lot. Like, she is a really cool model. I think she fits it very well. She's very key, actually, to the team. And Peter actually agreed with this. When I interviewed him, he said that she's very key to softening up the team because I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you start turn one with 2 or 3 models with poison, and if they don't take that off and clear it, over time that's going to start to accumulate. And we saw that in our game with, I think it was Brisket, where she got poisoned early, and then right around turn 3 and 4, she was down to like 2 hitboxes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Egret isn't about doing bursts of damage, so if that's what you're expecting, you're just not going to get it. She is great at being able to do and affect models from a distance and never be touched.
Well, because then she goes back to the shadows, so you move up, do your flurry, get hopefully 2 or 3 models, do your 1-inch dodge because she can dodge when she does damage. Then you hit somebody with Snapfire, and the beautiful thing with Theron is you can get momentum with those hits because you just could say, hey, here's my character play, you get momentum for me, and now we got 4 momentum or more. Or not 4 or more, but you got 4 momentum, usually. Probably closer to 3 if you do flurry, but it's a good momentum generator.
You have to remember to put that on her, though.
Well, yeah, but especially turn 1, you're going to do it because you need the momentum, especially if you kick.
Yeah, so I think give her a chance. Don't try to get her into melee. Don't try to get her scoring. View her as affecting the game from a distance.
She can score. Like, she has a good kick.
Yeah.
But you should be focusing more on setting up your team to whittle things down. And I think this is the way you got to play Hunters, is you got to whittle people down, look for the weak point, go get those points, kill them. If the ball's there, score a goal, great. And then kind of retreat and reassess where the next target is. It is very Hunter-esque. I'm really enjoying this play style because you really are picking off like, okay, where's the next kill? Where are we hunting? Where are we going? It's not like my Farmers or Brewers where I just like, okay, we're going to go bash everybody. It's like Hunters, you got to be very surgical.
Yeah, you do have to manage a lot better. So we have one from Dave Farr. He's talking about how his list is Theron, Fahad, Cena, Yekar, Vethern, and Chaska.
Okay.
He says that he's having fun with them, but he finds that when he swaps out even one model, it really messes up his game. And so I guess he wants general tips as far as like, how do you start incorporating new models and learning them without having, these terrible game experiences? I mean, are you somebody that you take a list that you know very well and then just slowly try and piece a model in? Or do you say, I want to learn this model, so I try and build around what their strengths are?
Well, I think that's the problem is you have to look at what's the model I'm taking out doing, and then what is the new model going to do. So, for example, if you take Chaska out, it's like if you used him for like ranged attacks, you probably want to switch him out for another ranged attack player like Egret if that's the role you want to fill. But then it's like if you want to go for more of a striking thing, maybe you want to switch him out for like Ulfer. It depends on what your goal is with that team. So what I would say is, and this goes to that article that the Midwest Gamers published, that you got to think, what is my path to victory? So if I'm trying to kill people with character plays, what's the best way to get that? So if you take, and I would take Choska out, this is just a personal opinion, because the problem with Choska is he's probably one of the easier hunters to kill, because he's only 3-1 and he has only 16 boxes. So he's the easiest one to kill in my opinion.
Unless you put him in the trees.
It's true.
Then he's a nightmare.
He can be 3-2, and he can boost himself to a 3-3 if you really want to do that. But another problem he has is that his boombox costs 2, so you only can do it twice. 3 if you do Blessing of the Sunfather. The problem is that it doesn't generate momentum unless you put, once again, Theron puts Last
To be
Light
honest,
on there.
the times where I think Choska would be a great drop is if you're looking at a board and you see that there are forests on the edges of the board. Because you never know when he's going to be able to get a boombox where he kicks somebody off the board completely. Yeah. And that's obviously easy points if somebody's foolish enough to do that. And then you keep him in those forests where he gets the greatest benefit. Because taking out a 3-2 model, especially when somebody's going to be minus tack because that model's got cover in the forest, and they've got 16 boxes, that becomes a problem at that point.
Yeah, so what I would say is look at what your team wants to do. What was the team that he said he brought again?
He brings Theron as the captain, Fahad as the mascot, Cena, Yekar, Vethern, Choska.
Yeah, so I would kind of look at like why you're bringing the models that you are. I think Vethern might be a good switch because I think he goes better with Skatha. I would either bring O'Hearn or something that they might want to think about is until the Falconers come out anyways. Minx is really great with the hunters.
I agree.
She just does a ton of work, and it's all pretty much for free.
So the one thing that I definitely would do here is I would add Egret to this list just because Egret's great at setting up the others. Mm-hmm. Whether you want to just bug them from a distance or whether it's about putting out conditions that others can take advantage of.
Yeah.
And so I really like the idea of taking her specifically. But
yeah, so once again, I would just look at, okay, am I trying to go more scoring? Like, do I want to get like 2 goals and 2 takeouts? Do I want to do, 4 takeouts and 1 goal? And it's just, you got to figure out the best way to do it. So I would look at when you take a piece out, are you replacing the model to try and score more, or are you replacing it with the same type of model? And then just go from there. And the main thing is just play games with it. Like, honestly, I play different lineups, and I'll play it a couple times and say, hey, you want to know what? Vethern really not feeling it. Or maybe, hey, I tried Snow, really couldn't get it to work the way I wanted to. So just try everything out a couple times.
The other thing that I notice is if you take players in your meta that you are probably a little bit stronger than, and you practice with these new models, typically you're able to find a little bit of footing without getting blown off the board because you don't know those models well, and then step that up once you know them well and you think you're getting good results to the more experienced players in your meta. That's always a good way to go.
Another question?
Okay, so John Stokes asks, he wants to know about where to take Skatha. He says he can't find matchups for Skatha. We've kind of answered this, but what are your thoughts? What are the ones where you are looking at automatically taking Skatha? Against the Brewers?
So, honestly, and this is why I defer to Peter, I'm just learning them, so I was like, sure, Skatha? Question mark. So here's what Peter said. He said, once again, you can drop either captain into any matchup and he feels comfortable with him, but being one of the better Hunters players in the world, that makes sense to me. So he said Brewers, he would drop Skatha. Engineers, he would drop Skatha. He didn't know about Farmers. He said, fuck them. He said, actually, other Hunters, I think the mirror matchup, Skatha is actually a really good matchup. Higher defense, more mobile. So that can be interesting. Masons, he said he would drop Skatha into. Morticians, drop Skatha. And that was it.
That's interesting. I'm surprised that he wants to drop him into other control teams.
So, kind of just to give you an idea, he said either one's usually fine. He doesn't really have a huge preference. He just likes Skatha into Obulus because he said it's a little less pain in the ass. He said that you can use Snowball to go get the ball off of him because he has unpredictable movement.
Okay.
So I think teams that have some unpredictable, he likes putting Skatha into there because you can dodge into him.
Okay.
To go get the ball.
Okay, I can see that.
Yep.
And then he wanted an answer about what will the Hunter's answer to Thresher be. Good fucking luck, I guess. That's the only answer there is.
Yeah, and...
Ooh, I know. Hashtag nerf the farmers.
So I think if you go into Thresher, and Peter played Skatha in the championship, and it didn't work out well for him. But to be fair, he made a couple mistakes that ended up costing him. So if he had to reset and was a little less jet lagged and stuff like that, maybe it would have been closer. But I think Scatha actually might be the play there, because I think the problem is if you pin Thresher with Theron,
Thresher can always get
Thresher can still get there. Even if you snare him, I mean, they can remove the condition. If you have Plowman, they can have you glide for free through that forest.
But the problem is, and this is just a farmer's issue, is okay, you're going to take Scatha because that's the scoring captain, and the control features of Theron aren't good enough for those farmers. But then guess which captain a farmer's player prefers playing into a scoring guild? Thresher, because he can chase everyone down. So
it's tough.
Here's the deal, John. I'm just going to tell you very clearly.
Speak the truth.
If you're playing the farmers and the person playing them is a skilled player, you are fucked, sir. That's the answer. Man.
Oh, wow. Well, this message brought to you by
Wire. Go ahead and ask Peter Williamson. That was his experience at the World Championships. Recorded for the world to see. I'm sure he doesn't like the farmers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough matchup. And like Chris said, if you have a really skilled player, like if you have an Alex Bots type that is good at managing those auras, it's going to be kind of an uphill battle. The thing I would say is put those conditions out, even if they have Harrow. And actually, a lot of teams are kind of not bringing Harrow. They're bringing other plays instead. So if they don't drop Harrow, I think it's even better for you. I would just say just put those conditions out, put those snares out, kind of try to spread them out, try to let them make a mistake. Don't go into them. Try to hit them on the wings, maybe pull somebody out with Jakar, and just try to work one out of there. There's some juicy targets that you can go after. Specifically like Harrow, he's actually pretty decent if you can get a hold of him to kill him. Actually, Thresher's not that hard to kill either. He only has like 19 boxes and he's 4-0. So if you get them kind of getting messing up, you can catch them. So I think it's just you have to let them make the mistake and just spread out and try to pick your models where you can get a couple goals in there.
Yeah, one thing we didn't mention, and shout out to Jake Smith over in Greenville, he brought this up, and we didn't really talk about this, but it deserves to be looked at, is Zarola and Fahad have linked. Mm-hmm. So Zarola would be great into teams that don't have a lot of 2-inch reach because of the unpredictable movement. And linked with Fahad, you can, do some damage. Or does Zarola put out snared at all?
She does.
With the chain bowls?
Yep.
Okay. So she can put that on somebody and then Fahad gets
so if you see somebody low, you can put up, snared with her, link, charge in, and
if you got a model that's in like an iffy position
mm-hmm.
and you're going first, man, that linked could be real strong. You just load them both up and
for sure. Like if you know you're going first and you see the model that's almost dead, I mean, on just a charge, not even having extra attacks, I did 6 damage to Meat Hook in our battle report.
Yeah, I think that's Zarola's one that doesn't get a ton of play. I think she deserves a little bit more play.
I like Zarola.
Yeah, just make sure that you keep her on facing off against models that have 1-inch reach.
Yeah.
Like the 2-inch reach models have too much advantage over her.
Oh yeah, even if she is a 5-0, they can deal with that pretty easy.
Yeah.
Let's get one more question, and then we're going to kind of wrap up.
That's the last question we got, man.
All right.
Yeah, we don't. Is there another one that you saw?
Nope, but one thing I do want to get is I want to get a Rage Quit Classic from either you or I. I have one if you're not prepared.
Go ahead, give us yours.
All right, so
I'm prepared, but I went last, so you go for it.
All right, so I am going to share. This one is going to be a War Machine one.
Okay.
Okay, this isn't you. I wasn't going to steal your story.
Of course.
But this is funny, though, because this was probably, I think, the first event Chris joined us from Utah. Like, it was like the first week you were here.
Oh, I remember this story.
So this was a story. We got 2 guys in our meta. One is a really crafty player. Like, this guy is really good at kind of like getting some jank in. He was a Circle of Ouroboros player, so they're really good at kind of dodging in and out. He's really good at manipulating the rules. The other guy was kind of new. He was playing, man, what was he playing? It was a starter game. So he was just playing.
You know what? We know these guys. We can drop their names.
All right.
So the player that's pretty crafty, his name is Evan, Evan Newton, he's a great gamer. Like, he's just good at any game that we put in front of him.
And then the newer player was Kevin. Now,
Kevin.
Kevin was playing just straight out of the box something, and Evan was playing Kador. So Kevin asked basically Evan in a game, he's like, hey, we're measuring it out. And anybody that plays War Machine knows it's all about threat with your casters. Because if somebody gets in like assassination run, they can just end the game and kill your caster, which is like your general for those that you don't play War Machine. So Kevin goes, hey, Evan, is there any way you can increase your movement?
Increase your speed. That's how he asked it.
So he's like, is there any way you can increase your speed on Sorsha? So this is Sorsha 1 for those of us that know the
And
Kador
she is
models.
one of the top assassination casters in the game.
She can be. And so Evan's like, no, there's no way I can increase your speed. He's like, okay, good. So Kevin measures out. He measures it so he's not in threat range of her. And then Evan activates his turn. And what's the
he feats?
Well, I know, but what's the spell called? It's Frost something or other.
Let me look.
It's the one that gives you an extra move. So basically, it didn't increase Evan's speed on Sorsha, but she got to move twice. So what he did is he moved, did the spell, which is like something's wind, winter's chill, whatever Kador likes to do to keep cold at night, and then she moves again, gets into the caster, straight up just murks the crap out of this guy, and Kevin got so pissed. He started like yelling.
Oh, he was going ballistic.
He's like, I thought you said there was no way you could increase her speed. And
you know what I meant. You know what I meant.
Straight up just, oh, his speed didn't change, dude. I just moved twice. He's like, you know what I meant. I asked you that, and you're just being like straight up like a lawyer right now. And I can't believe you did that. And I mean, the store's like looking at this like, what's going on with this dude? And he was flipping out. Like just straight up. And he, of course, he rage quit because his caster got assassinated. But
it's called Wind Rush was the ability.
Yes, Wind Rush. Thank you.
So yeah, he's freaking out. So this was one of my first times I was playing with this crew.
Yeah. So what did you think?
And so I was like, man, that like Evan guy was kind of a jerk there. Like, yeah, he knew what this guy meant, and Kevin was a newer player, and so I was like, man, that Evan guy's kind of a jerk, and I felt bad for Kevin. As it happened. Now, you guys are going to hear another Rage Quit story soon that makes me not feel as bad for Kevin anymore. But, yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, man, what a jerk. Now, meanwhile, Evan, he was just kind of being funny. It was a very casual game, and they know each other, so he knew what he was getting into with Kevin by doing that. But I do think that it is important, especially with newer players, to be forthcoming with what your abilities are.
I think also that's a little bit of difference in some games. Like, I feel like Guild Ball, it's a very open informational game. Like, a lot of times you're not really trying to hide anything. If somebody asks you something like, hey, is there any way, do you have a character play that can speed him up, or is there something, and a lot of times they'll tell you general things. They may not tell you their like plan, but they're not going to try to get you with like this, secret, thing they're trying to do. Whereas in War Machine, I feel like it is more about the gotchas. Like, you forgot about that extra speed I could give my guy, or you forgot he had armor piercing. So I feel like people get more angry in War Machine than they do at Guild Ball.
Yeah,
sometimes.
And War Machine is so much to keep track of.
Yeah,
but
ton.
The nature of Guild Ball is one where I do think it's about how you answer questions.
Yeah.
Or how you ask your questions, excuse me. You need to have a little vagueness in how you're asking. What was the question that I asked you that one time that I made it like super vague? And it was basically like,
you're like, oh, does anybody over there have defensive stuff? And I was like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Well, I wanted to know all of it, like sturdy and stoic and all of them.
Man.
So I tried to ask it like way vague.
Do you want me to sit here and write out a 10-page paper on all my defensive tech?
Well, you never know where it's going to be like some fucked up defensive thing that you can do.
So,
by the way, unpredictable movement counts as defensive stuff.
That's fair.
Okay.
So wrapping this up, one thing I wanted to get out, a couple of events kind of coming up. First thing, we are not going to the American Team Championship.
Yeah, there wasn't a huge amount of turnout. There were some travel issues, so we are not going to be able to make it.
Well, they actually canceled the tournament, too.
And they canceled the tournament. So That's unfortunate. I was looking forward to playing with some of those guys up there. But the nice thing is there is an event that will be replacing it on our schedules.
Yeah, so there's a tournament in Greenville on that same day, actually, where they're like, hey, we'll go ahead and run a tournament in Greenville. I think it's up in Borderlands. And, yeah, so January 13th, we're going to go up to Greenville and have a pretty good tournament there. There's already 7 people signed up.
Yeah.
And we're
That'll be a sweet tournament. They usually get some really good players.
So, but the bigger thing in Greenville is there was an announcement this week, and it was a tournament on April 7th, so mark your calendars. And this is Old Jake's Howzat. It's in Greenville, South Carolina, which for those of you that don't know, it's kind of like northwest South Carolina.
Yeah.
And it's going to be sponsored by Birds Fly South Ale Project, so it's going to be in a brewery. So those of you that like to partake in the good adult beverages and other adult beverages, as I said before.
Whatever the hell those are supposed to be.
So it's going to be a good time, I think. And we already have 24 people have already paid. And there's over 30 people that said they're going.
Yo,
and
Alex Bots, show up for this.
get them Chicago boys to come down.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge tournament. The fact that we're in December and there's already 24 commitments.
24 paid.
Okay, well, 25 commitments. We're going to include me.
Yeah, sure. I think Jake will disagree that you don't count until you pay up.
I'm going. So here's the deal. You have to sign up early on Tiebreak. You can find the event on Tiebreak. Old Jake's Howzat.
Links already been posted in the Guild Ball support group and our local groups and stuff.
And so
I put it on
need
Twitter.
To get on there, but I don't like technology.
So, but the cool thing is, and this is why we want like those Chicago boys to come down. We want those, Virginia boys to come down. Is like we have some pretty top players there. We got Jared McGraw from Anatomical Precision is going to be there.
Great.
Hopefully Michael Klein. I'm trying to convince him to come down, which would be great. We have Brian White's coming up from Atlanta. There's a lot of good players in this area that are playing. So we got Mike. He's playing in it.
I think we've been talking about this for a while. We said it on the very first podcast that the South has some great players. And to be honest, I think that I speak for a lot of these guys down here that we think that we can keep up with these Northeastern players and metas. And we want to see you guys come down and show us what you got because we think that we can hang with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where I think we're newer onto the scene, and prior to that, there wasn't a lot of like high competitive play from this area. So I think it's going to be really exciting to even if we get stomped. I mean, I'm still going to take a lot away from it and just be like, all right, well, now I kind of measured up. It's almost like on A Knight's Tale where the cocky, arrogant knight's like, you've been measured, weighed, and found unworthy. So even if I'm, measured, weighed, and found unworthy, I'm going to improve and, rise from the ashes and, get back and stomp somebody in revenge.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't claim, and I've never claimed on this podcast that I'm like the best player around. I don't think I am, but I know the quality of players that are around here, and the quality of players around here can keep up. Like yep. I watch the games at Steamcon. I know what those guys do. I've seen the mistakes that get made. It's not like people from these other areas are playing perfect games.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a big tournament. It's going to be a qualifier for Steamcon.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Reiterate that
yeah.
If you win this thing, you get to go to Steamcon for free.
Yeah. So this is going to be a big enough tournament that I think we deserve to be on the map for it. And it's going to be a cool tournament as well.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the location. Jake was saying he could fit 100 people in that brewery if he needed to. And so I imagine that in the next few months, this thing's going to swell. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with a 50-plus man tournament.
Oh, and he said somebody from Steamforge is going to be there too. DC, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if you saw the post. He said DC is going to be there.
Okay.
So
cool.
And one more thing about it.
I'm really hoping, like, I just, in my soul, it just gets tickled at this thought that, like, right before this event, they nerf the farmers.
I could see that happening.
That would just be, would just make my day. I would just be laughing my way all the way down to the drive out there.
And I'd have to hear it for 3 freaking hours.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're going to hear it no matter what.
But what I was going to say is, and I think they will be. I think that March is probably going to be where it comes down. And so it's going to be before.
Can't come soon enough.
So, but all you northern boys, where it's going to be snowing, where it's going to be cold, you're hugging your pillow at night all cold, come down to sunny South Carolina, get some Guild Ball games in, enjoy kind of what we got to offer. Because I can guarantee it's going to be probably like 70, maybe even 80, maybe even 80 by April.
It'll be nice and warm. But we look forward to having a great time. We've got some great barbecue down here. I know that's always one of my big priorities whenever we travel for a tournament, finding some great places to eat. We'd love to, go out and grab something to eat with you and have even those side bets of, meta versus meta and all that kind of fun stuff, represent the pride of your meta. And I think that Jake might even do some awards for best meta pride and that sort of stuff.
We already started talking trash. We were already like, hey, we need to get more guys in the Asheville group, and we need to get more than all the other metas. So we're trying to get as many people as we can, and I think it's going to be a really good showing for everything. It's the South. I think it's going to be a big event, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. So bring it.
Okay, well, I think with that said, we're going to roll dice, throw some salt, and we're out of here.
We're out.